Mike Lee endorses a candidate for governor that is in Epstein's black book on today's Defending Utah Radio and TV. Back to Defending Utah Radio and TV. I'm Ben McClintock, right here with Kevin Paulson in studio from defendingutah.org, where we think right and wrong, not right and left. I encourage you to go to defendingutah.org to welcome.org and click on the membership tab and become a member today. Support this program. Help us to be able to come out with more programs, be able to do the work that we do. And a lot of you have seen our investigative reports, our whistleblowers, and so on. So that really helps do what we do. Also, go to Amazon, click on search bar for Defending Utah, and pick up our great books like The Proper Role of Government, The Teachings of H. Verlin Anderson, and much, much more. Great books to be able to help yourself and others understand the basic principles of liberty and how to apply them today. So in today's program, I wanted to talk about how Mike Lee is actually endorsed for governor Jon Huntsman Jr. So there's a lot of reasons why Jon Huntsman Jr. is not the Liberty candidate's choice, a Liberty person's choice to be a candidate. But I'm probably not a really good person for a lot of you to relate to, because I was never a fan of Mike Lee, and because, beside the TV tells you one thing about somebody, and then you look at what he does, and most of the time those things don't add up. So that's my background. But Kevin here, he was a supporter of Mike Lee. He helped Mike Lee get past the convention, and then he's kind of come along from there as well. So I wanted to have him on to talk about that. But before we do, I want to kind of just get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. So I want to share with you. We've got you're gonna have to excuse my technical abilities. Working on learning this program to be able to help us. There we go. Be able to be more technically savvy. We're going to share our screen with you here. We've got Senator Mike Lee, just endorsed former governor, Utah Governor Huntsman Jr. in GOP gubernatorial race. A lot of folks, we're going to be talking about the background and why this shouldn't be a big surprise, but what might be a big surprise for a lot of folks is that Jon Huntsman and his wife are found in Jeffery Epstein's little black book. You know, Jeffery Epstein, the guy that didn't hang himself, as the meme says. So that's a real important thing for us to be able to remember when, I didn't share that. I didn't transfer that over. So I'm going to do that again. Transfer this over. So Jeffery Epstein's little black book, you can see him right there, him and his wife, Mary Kay. And then here, Mike Lee endorses the governor, former governor again, to be the governor once more. So that's what we're seeing here. And so I wanted to have Kevin on to be able to talk about how your transition from being a big supporter of his to not being a supporter of his.
Yeah, this was about 10 years ago. It was my first time ever being a delegate for the Republican Party. And it was my first time actually going to caucus. I think that year I showed up to caucus and there were 4 people there.
Wow.
And everyone else had done something before. And they said, "Hey, do you want to be a delegate?" And I said, "Yeah." And then I was all ready to run to be a delegate, and I didn't have to. And I was a delegate for both county and state. And I had a great time. It was really interesting to see how the process worked and go to convention. And I did a lot of studying. And when I looked at all the Senate candidates, the one that was most liberty-minded seemed to be Mike Lee.
Mm-hmm.
And everything he said. And there was a particularly helpful DVD or CD. Actually, it was a DVD that was sent out. Lloyd Brunson sent it out, and he had done a bunch of interviews with all of the candidates.
Didn't he run for Senate that year too?
I think it was the next time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because he was just helping people to learn about the candidates that time. He might have run. I think it was the next term though. But anyway, and I got to talk to Mike just very briefly. And at that time, it was I was kind of wet behind the ears on vetting candidates, and I just had my little litmus test questions, and they weren't really that hard. I think my question for Mike Lee was, have you ever heard of the 5,000-year leap? I was like, oh yeah, great book. And I was like, oh yeah, he's my guy. And
he's a constitutionalist.
And you know, and I was a BYU student when Rex Lee, Mike's dad, was suing to maintain the right of BYU to discriminate on housing standards. And so to maintain their BYU approved housing status, and so I thought, well, gosh, you know, he comes from good stock, and he's saying all the right things, and we can kick Bob Bennett out. So hooray! You know, this was great. And I was one of the guys that voted for Mike Lee every time, and he won. And there was another fellow there that was also, he sounded pretty good too, and they were kind of neck and neck, but Mike got 60+%.
That was Bridgewater, wasn't it?
Bridgewater,
Yep.
yeah, Bridgewater sounded really good too. Anyway, years later, I started to learn things about Mike that I was really shocked to hear, and one of those was I was called for a teletown hall, and it was about the Patriot Act number 2, which Mike Lee was very outspoken against the Patriot Act.
The official name wasn't that the USA Freedom Act?
Yes, the USA Freedom Act.
If you're against this bill, you're against USA Freedom.
Right, yeah. Anytime a bill is called something wonderful, you should think something horrible. So anyway, Mike was explaining why he was not only in favor of the bill, he was sponsoring the bill. Mm-hmm. Because, gosh darn it, if we don't get control of it, then they will be.
And this bill, just for folks that were like, well, you know, maybe it's the best thing you could do. You know, he actually teamed up with Obama for they together worked on this bill. It was co-endorsed by Obama as it was going through the process. So it's not like he was getting the best thing through because Obama was fighting him. No, they teamed up on this. Yeah,
I was shocked, and I tried to get a word in on those teletown halls. You know, it's very hard to get in and actually say something, but I wasn't able to, but I was just kind of, my countenance fell when that happened, and that was kind of 2 strikes for me, because during the Ron Paul campaign, I was, of course, an ardent supporter of Paul's, and Mike was not. He was not so ardent, and he would kind of privately say. In fact, I wrote him a message on Facebook. He responded privately, say, "Hey, I'm a fan of Dr. Paul's, but this is why we don't want to do that, da 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 da." And I'll have to look up what the comments were exactly, but not real impressed. And there have been more things since that led me to believe that Mike's really not the champion of liberty that he made himself out to be.
Right. So let's go out. So there was a lot of things during that time that I don't remember specifically, a lot of them. Why I was like, yeah, that's. In fact, I wasn't a big fan of Bridgewater either. I could see through who both of their associations were to begin with, and how they came to be doing what they were doing, and programs that they were in favor of. And I was just like, no, you know, this isn't what's going on. But then as time went on, it became more and more obvious who he was. And there's some articles that we're going to go through to kind of show a lot of that. That's going to be really important for us to be able to see. And so I want to show those as we kind of go through here. We go here with Jon Huntsman Sr. This was an article that came out in the Tribune. This was back in 2014. And how Jon Huntsman Sr. So what we know about a lot in politics, right, is you've got this idea of political theater, where you have these 2 sides, kind of like with professional wrestling, of them making it look like they hate each other.
Yeah,
and
otherwise known as lying.
And so you had Senior coming out saying that Mike Lee's embarrassed Utah, and that there are some, you know, people that are the establishment's going to be running somebody against him, and this was all done to get all the base thinking that, you know, Mike Lee's great and the establishment hates him, so that means we've got to rally behind him, right? It's no surprise that Lee has trouble with Utah's establishment, and it's been long rumored he'll face an intra-party challenge when he seeks re-election. Okay, let's go right there, just right off the top. Okay, Mike, this was the year that Mike Lee, this was right after SB 54 came out, and the Count My Vote deal, where you're getting rid of the caucus system, and Mike Lee decided to do what? He decided to actually get signatures. And the excuse that he gave, this is political malpractice if I don't do this. I just have to because political malpractice. Political malpractice was the excuse. I've got to get signatures. I've got to give credibility to Count My Vote. I've got to give credibility to SB 54 because political malpractice.
Well, yeah, what does that even mean, political malpractice? I mean, isn't that... you just say political, and the word
and
malpractice is assumed. I mean, why do you have to say that?
And the excuse was, what if I don't make it through the convention? Then it's political malpractice for me not to serve my constituents and give them the ballot.
As if he's not giving us a chance to work things out through the caucus system.
Right. It was a complete move to give political cover for Count My Vote in SB 54, which now, right, when it doesn't even matter, says that, I want to get that repealed. Was that what he was saying? No, back then he was not saying that at all. And so was there any chance of him actually losing in convention where all of the grassroots supporters wanted him? No, there was zero chance of him not getting on the ballot through the convention. There was no, if there was any, I can't remember, I haven't been able to find if there was a challenger, but if there was a challenger, there was nobody.
He's very popular. And so, it would be shocking if he didn't get the required 60% or whatever there
was no chance.
Well, and it doesn't even matter now in convention because almost everybody does signatures.
Anyways, but he's refusing to do it again. But so what happened to political malpractice, which is just ridiculous. And so there was no, and was there an establishment challenger at that time? No, there was not a challenger at all. There was no there was no caucus challenger. There was no primary challenger either. The only challenge was in the general election against the Democrats. And so if you remember this election, it was in 2016, the best, because surely, the establishment, they just couldn't get a challenger in time to challenge him on the Republican side, so they had to make sure that the Democrats had a strong challenger for Mike Lee. And so the Democrats, who did they nominate to be Mike Lee's challenger in the general election? Misty Snow, a bagger from Harmon's grocery store. That was his big challenge in the general election. It was completely political theater. There was zero chance of him losing in either race.
Well, I don't know. Those baggers are pretty quick.
A cross-dressing bagger. You think that's going to win in a statewide vote in election in Utah? Not a chance. It was zero, funding behind it, of course. Zero serious political challenge, a cross-dresser. And, not to diminish bag people that are bagging your groceries, really appreciate them. It's a really important job. But it's not the thing that's going to make you a serious contender in a statewide election for U.S. Senate.
It would definitely be a handicap, for sure.
And everything in that whole thing was a handicap. There was zero. They basically, what they did was they made sure that whoever the challenger was had zero chance of winning. So the idea that there was a serious challenger from the establishment is a complete joke. This Misty Snow was not
didn't have any support.
No. Didn't have It was a complete joke.
And I vaguely remember that, but I don't. I wasn't up on it at the time.
And so we go to the next article, right? We've got Huntsman. So his dad says that this is from The Hill. His dad said that he wouldn't go against, that he didn't like Mike Lee, but then Jon Huntsman Jr. comes out and says that he won't rule out another run, but I won't run against Mike. And when you go on to later on in the article, it says, Mike Lee says about Jon Huntsman, the guy that's on Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book, I love the man. I loved working with him and wish him well in anything he chooses to do. Big supporters of him. You go to, so let's get into some more about Jon Huntsman. We've got an article on defendingutah.org. Jon Huntsman and the New World Order, which has a lot of his links to the globalists. He was a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, was a big supporter of, was actually an attendee of the Bilderberg Summit and the Atlantic Council, which was a big pusher of the New World Order. We go to Jeffrey Epstein's Little Black Book. Let's see here. Jeffrey. Oh, and then here's this article from, that's the senior one. Sorry. Wanting to make sure I get this from Mike. Oh, from about Mike Lee. We've got his Huntsman. What's his background? So before he became a senator, if you don't know, he actually worked for Huntsman. Lee served at the state of Utah as Governor Huntsman's general counsel, so his lawyer, and was later honored to reunite with Justice Alito, now Supreme Court, for 1 year. So he, before becoming in the Senate, which was a big red flag for me, he worked for Jon Huntsman Jr. And then we have, it was during that time that actually Huntsman, during that election, came out and supported Mike Lee. And in fact, we go to Mike Lee's website, and we go through here, which is pretty interesting right here. We go back to, I'll do this one first, then we'll go back to the other one. Jon Huntsman Jr., his endorsement, this is on his homepage. It's something that Mike Lee is proud of. Of course, he just endorsed him. And Jon Huntsman says, I have known and worked with and admired Mike Lee for many years. He's at the forefront of a new generation of leaders in Washington. I'm excited to assist him as co-chair of his National Re-Election Committee. So this is really incestuous. They're endorsing each other.
Well, I guess I'd expect that, a couple of buddies, right? But I guess I wonder about the Huntsman's principles, and and Mike seems to be falling short of his. I'm sure there are numerous examples of where
we'll get
Huntsman
into that for sure.
Does as well.
Well, Huntsman, yeah, he was the one that brought not Obamacare. He was the one that brought Common Core to Utah. He was a big what was it? During that time, he was the one that, of course, it was Herbert was his lieutenant governor. Jon Huntsman has been big government, a lover of big government for a long time. Then we have Scott Anderson from Zions Bank, who also endorses Mike Lee. And we see this one. So this is a big deal because Zions Bank and Scott Anderson have been big supporters of every big government program and initiative that have come on the ballot. The gas tax, they were big pushers of that. This tax overhaul bill, that structure bill that came over the Christmas holiday, that's been a big debacle. It was Scott Anderson was big on that. You just go through all these different initiatives that wanted to that were on the ballot that wanted to raise the gas tax, and Scott Anderson's behind it and was a part of that.
It's really sad to see people that really stand for liberty, or at least that we think are, to go this route, where they just the undermine thing. I mean, the Patriot Act was the big blow for me, but there was the Family Leave Act as well.
That's this one. So if you want to learn more about that USA Freedom Act, we've got the article on our website. Just go to defendingutah.org and you search for Mike Lee and you'll find that.
But it's like, I remember Mike standing up for the filibuster, right? Then he spoke for I don't know how many hours.
With Rand Paul, yeah.
And it's like, hey, why spend all that time and effort grandstanding about liberty and then vote wrong?
Because well, there's this music video by Reason, right? The Reason magazine. They've got their YouTube channel where they just scream at each other on the floor to be able to make themselves look good. They can use that as a good fundraising thing.
Oh,
but then they're all friends and they all vote together. And so it's their voting record, and that's really important here. Here's an article by Scott Bradley that is really important for us to be able to look at and to be able to see, because Mike Lee's record is different than his rhetoric. His rhetoric, of course, he's promoted by the mainstream media as being a major constitutionalist. But when you look at his record, where it really matters is where he's falling short. Scott Bradley documents his support in the Constitutional Convention range area. We get some more detail of Jon Huntsman Jr.'s connection. And he goes on talking about the Mitch McConnell connection, who's a big supporter of big government. Mike Lee's been supporting major legislation that has been working towards the destruction of American sovereignty, such as the USMCA, such as the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And this article talks about how his support of these initiatives, as well as along with preemptive war resolutions and big government trade agreements, income taxes, and on and on and on. And of course, we've got the USA Freedom Act. And so we've got this massive record of saying one thing and doing the exact opposite.
Yeah, I found the notes from Mike. He actually went to great length to explain why he voted for Romney instead of Ron Paul, even though he stands with Ron Paul ideologically.
And he just came out and said last election he voted for McMullen, who was CIA op from top to bottom.
Yeah, his resume.
CFR, another CFR member that Mike Lee supports.
But it's basically what Mike is saying, and I can read a couple of these comments. In fact, I'll just read his response. I basically asked him, "Hey, why?" I was applauding his efforts in the Senate. I told him up front, "Hey, I was proud to say I was a delegate for you to get you in and get Bennett kicked out." Mm-hmm. And I said, "Please help me understand why you endorsed Romney over Paul. I won't give you grief about it. I'm just really puzzled." So just really frank and honest with him. "Thanks, Kevin. I love Ron Paul and work closely with his son Rand in the Senate. Rand may well be my closest friend and ally there. I endorsed Romney, even though he and I don't agree on a number of things, because it recently occurred to me that unless one Republican candidate starts gaining some traction soon, we will have to endure 4 more years of Obama." See, we hear this a lot from people. So he says, "We cannot afford it. We cannot afford that."
And who won anyways?
Obama.
Oh, Obama.
"I therefore endorse the only guy who I think is likely to get the Republican nomination at this point. Thanks for your friendship and support. Best, Mike." So, I mean, this is and then he actually wrote me several more letters basically saying the same thing. Hey, he's going to be our nominee. And, I just got to get behind him. It was like, rally behind our nominee. Yeah. It's a foregone conclusion that he's going to be our nominee. And, of course, what did you see at the convention? A whole bunch of shenanigans discounting the delegates for Paul, throwing out entire states.
After
just
the election,
because
the Romney
Paul.
campaign actually admitted that they cheated in Nevada.
Oh, well, I was there. So I went to the Nevada State Convention, and they pulled some shenanigans where they bust in a whole bunch of people after the deadline, and then suddenly they said, "Oh, no, it's okay," and they turned the lights out, and they sent everybody out of the room, and they brought everybody back in, which is how they create confusion so that they can suddenly count everybody. "Oh, well, we didn't really know who was credentialed, so we had to let them in anyway." And it was about 85% for Ron Paul before the busing, and then it was about 60% for Ron Paul after the busing. Wow. It was so overwhelmingly in favor of Paul that even after they cheated, Paul still had the supermajority that they needed. But then, unfortunately, the Ron Paul campaign had infiltrators. Mm-hmm. And so it's just a battleground. People don't really realize how sneaky politicians can be. And so, Mike, if you are listening, we're watching you. Mm-hmm. And look, I would love for you to be that guy that stands up for liberty. That's what you're known for. That's your persona. That's why we voted for you. At least that's why I voted for you. And if you can, everybody can repent. Okay? And so I would plead with you, repent. Stand up for what's right, regardless of whether you have support from the Republicans. Do the right thing. Generate your own support. You're used to standing alone. Keep doing it. Only do it right. Don't cave in on these socialist programs. Anyway, I could go on.
Well, and why continue to support CFR candidates? Why continue to support a candidate that was a client of Jeffrey Epstein?
Yeah.
Why continue to support international agreements that are destroying American sovereignty when you're supposed to be a constitutionalist? And so that goes that call that Kevin just made, I think, goes doubly for us, that we need to make sure that we are not continuing to support candidates ourselves based on what the media says they are. The media says, "Oh, they're far right wing, and that's what I am, so I need to support." Let's start looking at their actual words, their actual bills that they're doing, and seeing how they're actually expanding on the Patriot Act. Yeah. How the Patriot Act actually, without Mike Lee, wouldn't be here right now. It was every single bad portion of the Patriot Act was about to expire. And then Mike Lee comes along with the USA Freedom Act and says, "Oh, let's expand that. Let's get Obama to team up with me and expand this."
It was like cognitive dissonance. I couldn't figure out what was happening on this teletown hall when he was telling me this. And where I don't know, Mike, I don't know if you've spoken with Thomas Massey, but he's the kind of guy we need to have
emulate
in Utah. And if you used to be that guy, or at least we thought you were.
Okay.
We thought you were. But
he talked like that guy.
Yeah, you talk like that guy. We need you to act like that guy. We need you to go stand with Thomas Massey, corral the troops, the Liberty people, and not steer them off, but keep them focused on the task, which is protecting our liberties, especially now that this COVID monster has attacked us.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so we both, Mike Lee's got to make a change. We've got to make a change as a people. We've got to understand these things better and not just give people the free pass. So this has been Ben McClintock here with Kevin Paulson in studio from defendingutah.org. Encourage you, please, if you like what we do, you enjoy the content, want us to come up with more, want to take advantage of the benefits of membership in Defending Utah as well, including training to be a better activist, go to defendingutah.org and click on the membership tab and become a member today. Get your freedom supplies over at Amazon. Just type in Defending Utah and you'll have a list of the books that we offer there. Until next time.